Good morning. Welcome to the Monday meeting of the BOCC. We'll go through agenda review. I think looks like Tracy, Building and Planning is the first one on there.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tracy Jackson, Building and Planning. In front of you for tomorrow is just call for hearing, setting the public hearing. And it's the Bo Stordahl comp plan rezone scheduled September 24th at 9:30. And they're looking to change the density for 108 acres. It's a procedural requirement. It's just part of the process for them to be able to change their to make some housing out there for family.
Changing it. What's the basic change they're requesting?
I knew you were gonna ask that.
Used to be a rock.
It's a rock quarry, yep.
Yeah.
They're going, it's 9 parcels in total. 7 right now are light manufacturing, 2 are zone residential. And they're changing them to all rural residential
Rural
too.
residential. And where's the location?
It's a Walker Road and Carroll's Road.
The
big
yes,
pit.
okay, okay, I
Yep,
know. It.
east.
Yeah, it's that right next to where all the other,
Homes are,
well, Walker Road is a case all by itself.
right. So they're looking to do, I believe, 3 homes for family members, so.
Hmm.
Yep. And Planning Commission approved it, all unanimously, so it'll be on here on the 24th.
Okay.
It's nice to have you 3 back.
How
Welcome.
much of a fee did Stordahl have to pay?
I'd have to go look at the fee sheet.
But they do have to pay a fee.
Yeah, they did. I want to say about 2,400 or 3,000.
I remember 3K, but
There was 2 parts of that, and then yeah, everything combined was about 3, I believe.
okay, thank you.
I think the comp plan was about 2,400. Okay, that's it. I'll see you at 11.
Okay,
Great.
thanks. I see finance department on here, but she's on vacation. Right? Okay, so we'll run through that. Risk management, Shelley.
Shelley Pierce, Risk Manager. Got copies. Of a new resolution that I'll pass out to you.
That's at item 8 for tomorrow? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a brief update to the board. We are requesting a resolution at the upcoming meeting on September 10th, 2024. This request is to increase the workers' compensation impress balance from $35,000 to $60,000. This increase is necessary due to the rise in payment activity process through our third-party provider, Heisman, which is formerly Everly Vivian, to prevent any potential overdrafts on the account. The details will further outlined in the resolution and be available for any questions. What we've been finding is there's been more and more cases that are, we're running against timelines for payouts. And so we've been getting very, very skinny on the account. So we met with Treasury the Treasury Department. And so we decided that it was imperative that we increase the impress account.
I assume this is identical to what we've passed in the past, and our legal team has reviewed it and everything's good. And our finance person has reviewed it.
Correct.
That should cover it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Shelley.
Uh-huh.
See the sheriff department on here. I don't know if they're online. I'm assuming that they have this Spillman software. Okay, I don't see the sheriff, but Spillman software is what they use for communication.
Law enforcement records.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Marin, we'll just move down to.
Good morning, Marin Fox, Director of Corrections. We have on the agenda tomorrow a contract with a food service provider, Trinity. We went out to bid and received bids from two companies, Summit, which is our current contractor, and Trinity. We chose the lower cost option, which was the Trinity. It's a 1-year contract with 4 one-year extensions, so basically a 5-year contract. Currently, we're paying on a sliding scale with Summit, $2.16 a meal. With Trinity, that will go to $1,962 a meal. So it's going to be a little bit lower. And the juvenile price goes from $2,448 to a flat $2.
Wow, so actually decrease.
So I've been a little confused a lot confused in the past, but particular to this one.
Sure.
Can you give me an all-in price per meal? So what does this pay for? And then in addition to that, you've got some other costs, right?
Sure. So this pays for all of the food costs and 3 cooks.
Including cooks?
Mhm. And we have a a kitchen manager that is a county employee, so that is an additional cost. But this meal price includes everything in the kitchen, all the food, the meal planning, all of that.
How do you deal with the cleanup and waste disposal of packaging and all that? That's just on the overall jail overhead?
Correct. I'd have to look. I can't remember if that's part of like the paper bags and all of that. That might be a county cost, but I can get back to you on that. I'm not positive if that's in or not.
So in any event, if we use the $2 number, we're not above $3, all costs included.
Right. No, I would not think so.
Yeah, in fact, you should be well below that.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So what's their strategy for cutting costs? Why would they be able to cut costs when the other company doesn't?
Well, they also provide our commissary services and the tablets we use in inmate areas. So I think they may have some leverage just because they're already in our facility providing some services.
Oh, okay,
So they're
That's a
looking-
good question.
they're looking at an overall relationship.
okay.
Yeah.
And we look at the menu, of course, and compare it to what we're serving now. So it's a comparable menu to what the inmates are receiving. We do 2 cold meals and 1 hot meal a day.
Yeah.
And Summit wasn't a lot more expensive, but it was more expensive than Trinity.
And it's basically a 5-year contract. You have 1 year with 4 yearly extensions. Do those extensions have escalation costs for food?
Yes, and Chris will
a
be on the
formula.
meeting tomorrow and he'll be able to tell you what that is, but that's built into the contract. Yeah,
Formula for that? Okay.
CPI. Mhm.
And for those people who might be inclined to complain, the food is according to government guidelines,
Right.
right?
Yep. Has to be nutritionally sound. It's reviewed by a nutritionist. The company has a nutritionist that provides the meals. The reason juvenile is a little bit higher is because we have to follow the school
Got it.
requirements. So juvenile, they have more fruits and vegetables and I think milk. So it's a little bit more costly for that, but we do get reimbursement from OSPI for some of the juvenile meal cost.
Wow, yeah. Okay, thanks, Maria.
Yep.
And that covered juvenile detention too, so Public Works.
Good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. Public Works has two items on the agenda for tomorrow. The first is a call for bids for the high-density polyethylene pipe that we use up at the landfill. We use those to continue our gas collection system. And the other item that we have is an amendment.
This is going into the new cell that's being built.
No, this is what we use it as we stack up garbage. You have to extend the gas wells up. So it's an operational expense to keep our gas collection system expanding as we add more garbage. So our other item is amendment number 2 with RH2 Engineering for the Tudor water system improvements. It's a design increase of $35,000. This was a request from Public Works to add additional design services.
Weren't we were trying to look for more capacity on this?
This was some additional electrical work that needed to be
Different than
done.
that, I know.
Yes.
So the presumption is that was unforeseen.
Correct. It was not included in the original scope.
Okay, but if we had been totally attentive, we would have said, oh, but you need to do this too? So
Yes.
This is an oversight on our part. It's not them trying to,
No, it's
trying
not
to
them
play us.
trying to say, oh, it took us 20 more hours to do it, so that's 35,000. No, it was an additional work item.
thank you. I would suspect you'll get that question tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay,
Mike Moss, Public Services Director, sorry. We'd also have a motion item tomorrow, number 11, a bid award to WeatherGuard Inc. for removal and replacement for the annex roof. Total amount a little over 191,000. We did get 4 bids in for this project. Of course, being WeatherGuard being the lowest, the next lowest was only $5,000 more. The due dates were August 27th. It is just a bid award, but we're asking tomorrow for a bid award and execution if possible. We did get all the contract paperwork received last Friday from WeatherGuard. So if we can get it both executed and awarded tomorrow, they could start work sooner than later and get done before the rains come. So if not, we'd have to push it back a week.
So the motion is just approving the bid award. So we have to add something else to the
Yep.
motion?
Correct, a bid award and execution. Sometimes we put them both together as a package. A lot of times we don't get the paperwork back from the contractor in time, but since we have and with the weather, it could say and execute. Bid award and execution. Be awesome. Thank you.
I see we closed out because we did the HVAC over there.
Correct.
They don't have to disturb any of that stuff.
Do not know.
Yeah.
What, do you think government does it backwards sometimes?
Well, just check.
Not Callis County.
Just checking. I tell you this because I just had a phone message on my thing. It said, we striped Sandy Bend Road, but the person said we missed Mole Road, Mole or Mall Road off of Sandy Bend. He said we missed it last time.
Yeah, there's certain roads
I
we
don't
don't do every road every summer. So we'll have to go back and check if it's like next summer, we go every other year. So, but we hit the main lines every single year, of course, but some of the side roads will get done every other year.
It sounded like we chip sealed some stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll double check with the supervisor on that. If we chip sealed and overlaid it, then we usually stripe right behind it. So that we still have the stripers in town. So they're in the they're in the Castle Rock region later today doing South Silver Lake and Headquarters Road. So they may be going back to that area.
Somebody just check that.
Yeah.
It's just on my machines.
Okay, we'll check on that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Health and Human Services, Gina.
Now for the little tiny amount of money.
Morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services. Yes, we have just a small amendment on the agenda tomorrow. This is an amendment to our Consolidated Homeless Grant with the Department of Commerce. So they're adding some HEN funds, the Housing and Essential Needs funds that were, part of it was a miscalculation from the original grant agreement that we saw an amendment for earlier this year for last fiscal year. And so this amendment is adding some of that for this current fiscal year. There was also some additional funds approved by the legislature that are being included in this amendment as well. Those are some of the funds that we have talked about using for like some of our coordinated entry contracts or other document recording fee contracts. So we've started doing that, and these additional funds we would look to do that with as well. Also on the agenda is the pass-through contract we have with Lower Columbia CAP. So we're passing down the portion of the HEN funds to Lower Columbia CAP for this current fiscal year. And the state contract is a 2-year contract, so we've just started the second fiscal year of the contract. We usually see the application for the next fiscal year come out sometime in the winter when we start working on that. Any questions?
So of the $502,500, how will that be used? As an example, maybe 2 or 3 examples that will span the gamut?
So it's specifically for the 502,000 for the Housing and Essential Needs program, which the bulk of it is towards rent assistance. So when someone is referred, they get referred through coordinated entry. When someone's referred for housing through the HEN program, they have to be HEN eligible through DSHS. DSHS does that eligibility piece. CAP then does the housing piece with them, looking for housing, applying for housing, getting into housing. So the funding can pay for move-in costs and rent while they're in the HEN program. It can also help with some essential need items like laundry, shampoo, that kind of thing.
Do they have to pay any of it back, the recipients, that is?
No.
Okay. Have I in all these years made any headway in saying that's a problem that we continue to feed and you feed a problem and it's going to grow it? I've made no progress, have I?
I've heard you say that.
Yeah.
This particular program, as I mentioned, it's connected to the state HEN program. If their eligibility with the state lapses, then their eligibility for the housing piece is done as well. So they have to maintain their eligibility with the state case manager by completing certain components of their responsibilities. So when they come into the program, the state finds they're not eligible, they're not able to work for a period of 90 days or longer. They then work with them on what does that look like? Is it a temporary physical disability? Is it a long-term disability? Is it a mental health issue? What is the reason behind that? And they set these tasks for an individual to complete while they're in the program.
So this rental assistance is for people with disabilities?
It could be not necessarily like a developmental disability. It could be a physical disability, something that is
So they have to be disabled in some way to get this assistance?
correct.
So
And-
this isn't, I lost my job last week and I don't have any reserves, so I'm going to come to you and you'll pay my rent?
Correct, correct. No, this is.
It's not that.
No, this is specific, the housing and essential needs is what it's called, and it's, I guess it's a partnership with the state where they're looking at, the state finds that they're not able to work for a period of 90 days or more, and that's part of their eligibility. So then they look at what's preventing you from working and set kind of some goals around what a person needs to do to either get back into the workforce, or sometimes it is a long-term disability option that they then try to connect them to there.
Okay, and what happens to the other 800,000 or so?
So that other amount, we're not passing it through. We are at this point keeping at the county level, and we've have talked before about utilizing some of that funding for our coordinated entry contracts and other document recording fee contracts if it's appropriate, so that we can use
Okay.
that money instead of document recording fees.
So how did you decide 502,500 was the right number?
Was the HIN portion. So that came to us from
Oh,
this.
you were told.
Yeah, that was the HIN piece. Yeah.
Okay. It's amazing how much they actually know up there.
So, Gina, I'm wondering if you might be able to find out what kind of a turnover there is in terms of the individuals. How many are on permanent disability, so they're going to be permanently in subsidized housing, and how many people are being assisted and when their disability is taken care of, they work off the program. I think that there's always money being spent on people that are less fortunate for a whole bunch of different reasons. But it's not always the same people. That
Mhm.
changes over time.
Mhm.
That would be helpful, because I think, I know Mr. Mortensen's always interested in, as we all are, is this
glad you
is
added
a
that.
long-term assistance program?
Yeah.
And I know the answer to some of that is yes, because they're permanently disabled, but
Yeah.
a lot of them are not.
Yeah.
The other thing is, to what extent would the folks who are at the city of Longview's homeless shelter, how many of those folks qualify for the HIN assistance? Because we know a lot of the homeless that are stuck in homelessness
Mhm.
have multiple disabilities.
Yeah, without knowing sort of more about the demographics of who's staying there, I know that there have been a couple referrals to the HIN for the HIN housing piece that have been to individuals from Hope Village. So I know that has happened, but I don't have a good broad kind of picture of what that looks like. I can share, and I'll have to ask around about how many are, can, end up being permanently disabled. I'd probably have to reach out to the state and ask that question. But I can share, I looked at last fiscal year's data a little bit. So the CAP was serving about 250 people in that program. The typical length of stay is 1 to 2 years in the program. Last year, they exited 59 to permanent housing, and 46 of those were rental by client with no ongoing housing subsidy, which would mean on their own, no housing subsidy that they, sometimes they'll transition to a different housing voucher or something like that, but these were independent on their own. So that does happen where people are able to get back to work and then they're able to transition out on their own. But I'll ask about that data about permanent disability and see if I can track that down.
Great, thank you.
Along those lines, all kinds of data is really useful. Average, the dollars like I remember out of the ARPA money, the rental assistance was about $863 per month.
Oh, on average, yeah.
Yeah, on average, and I'd like to know what the average is
Okay.
here. It's when people, and I use the term loosely, graduate out of the program, the numbers that actually graduate to taking care of themselves, not subsidized housing.
Okay.
And out of curiosity, maybe is when somebody's a resident of the Longview camp, to whom does the cap payment
Go to.
Yeah.
They would be issuing only to when that individual secures housing, and then the housing payment would go directly to that.
Oh, it doesn't go to while they're
No,
a client of the camp.
no.
Because that's considered transitional housing. I mean, that's not the program that, and
Right, and will help to obtain and maintain permanent housing.
they might get vouchers for personal items, that the essential needs part.
Right,
That part of it could goes, but
Mhm.
they get the commodity rather than a cash
right,
equivalent.
They get the commodity, but not the cash, you said. Right. Okay.
the rent, yeah.
You know how that is, how that happens? I mean, is there a truck that pulls up outside the camp?
For the commodity piece.
Yeah.
With the HEN program, it's issued in the form of a small gift card to the dollar store. So, the dollar store is one of the only stores that doesn't have, you can't buy cigarettes or liquor or anything like that. So they can get some of just those basic essential items that they may need that way. So that's been the easiest way to do it.
Still can pick up the Monster drinks probably.
Probably. I know, those are everywhere. Okay, I'll look at some more of that, more of those pieces. Any other questions?
Hopefully over time, you can't do it by tomorrow, but the trends are always really good to try and figure out, and the all-in costs are always good to figure out. You heard me ask about the jail meals. What's the all-in cost? Because too often we get a partial picture of what gets spent. So as well as in business and in the government, I don't trust very many of the numbers I get because they don't do a holistic analysis of the costs.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But the county does keep some for administrative overhead, right? Your salary and Carol's and the finance
do.
director and,
Yeah.
so that dollar amount we probably should be aware of, 100,000 or 1,800,000 or whatever, what.
Yeah, it's, this contract splits it. There's a couple of the funding streams have it, I think, at 7% limit, and a couple of the others are up to 15, but it's still based on actual. Yeah.
But I was talking, not only that, because in fact, it's very hard to figure out Gina's time because it's spread over so many things she does. So I don't have any pretenses there that we're going to nail down $1.05. But I suspect recipients get Medicare money, or the service providers gets Medicare money. In other words, this client is costing beyond what HEN costs because they've got all these other services that go in. And from my seat on the ADSWA,
Mhm.
the Agency on Aging, disabilities of
agency.
Southwest Washington,
Yes.
the AAAs. There's a lot of money there. I mean, their annual budget is 30 million or just a bit more.
Hmm.
And they have what's the fund called? The accumulated fund. We have to keep increasing the amount that they're allowed to keep because the Adjua here in Southwest Washington is very efficient. I haven't heard any complaints. And they do the business and they actually make money.
Mm,
So I can't fault them for doing that. I just know that there's a lot of money out there and
mhm.
they take care of all kinds of problems, but they don't abuse it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's part of the challenge with looking at an overall, trying to get an overall average or cost, right? Is,
Yeah.
you know, we don't know all of the other services or all of the other things that people are accessing, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
They grant us about 8.2 million. What do we usually spend? These are reimbursement accounts, right?
Yeah, yep. This, what we usually spend, that's a good question. I'll look back. This year's contract is the highest it's ever been because there was some additional funding sources included. We haven't historically spent out the contract and I don't anticipate that will happen this time around either.
I'm wondering, are we, is it moving this way or is it flat or?
I know, I can look back off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot over the last couple of years, so, yeah.
Well, if memory serves me right, and it sometimes doesn't, I think there's a pretty healthy reserve fund, ending fund balance for HHS too, isn't there?
With document recording fees?
Well, I mean, just the whole department. We have a pretty healthy reserve balance.
Yep, I don't try to recall things off the top of my head anymore. I used to be able to do that. But we're getting into budget season, so.
A person of your age has to be careful. They can't remember as well.
I know, I used to work a lot better.
Yeah. The reason I asked, I was just trying to get a handle on if the need or at least the expenses are growing or are they just kind of holding flat? I mean, if we only spend 5 million, it's not like we get 3 million into reserves.
No,
You know,
No.
It's not that case.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll see you sooner than later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got a miscellaneous. We have anything else? Good.
You don't have anything? You don't have anything to bring up for miscellaneous?
I am unable to recall any such requirement.
So 11 o'clock, we have, okay. Yeah, you want to take a small break? We're trying to see if Jessica's available. We'll do early if we can.
Okay, do we have people in the audience that normally don't come? Okay.
So let's recess for, I don't know, 10 minutes and if she can come in, then we'll do that early.
Sounds good.
Okay. We're back. We'll head into HR.
Good morning, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have a few requests this morning. The first comes from Building and Planning. They're requesting to fill a senior planner position. This wouldn't be a new position. This would just change a current associate planner to senior planner.
They've taken on additional responsibilities, and I'd just like to post it and see the interest in the department, which I know there will be, and fill it within, and then not, I mean, it's just sliding them into a different pay scale with the additional responsibilities. It's not adding additional staff at all.
So if somebody takes it, then we don't have an opening as a. for
We
an
won't have
assistant
another
planner.
opening, no.
If you'd like, I can ask a question, but I don't have any.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We like those.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Yeah. Next item comes from the Health Department. They are coming back to the board to request to fill their local emergency response coordinator. The employee resigned in May of this year. It was previously requested, and they're back with some more information.
Good morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services again. We brought this position a couple weeks ago to the board. There was kind of some questions. This is the local emergency response coordinator. We've had this position for quite a few years. It's the funding for it comes from the Department of Health Consolidated Contract. This position works with our local community partners quite a bit in helping with emergency preparedness and response. So we invited some guests here today just to help kind of share their experience working with this position and how they've maybe contributed to the work. So we have Scott Neves and Marissa Hutchinson here to maybe help talk about the work and answer additional questions. We may be right here.
I can move to-
Let's try that. Hi, Commissioners. I'm Scott Neves with Department of Emergency Management. The LERC is an integral part of emergency response. Almost every disaster has a health and human services component to it. Specifically, we worked with the LERC on our comprehensive emergency planning, the subsections on mass care, mass sheltering. They worked on our countywide mass fatality planning and mass fatality planning. They were a key component in developing training countywide. Last year, we brought a national recognized instructor in on mass fatality planning, and they were an integral part of putting that together. They have spent time with our Southwest Washington Type 3 incident management team and are a liaison between Health and Human Services and that Type 3 team. They are also an integral part of any time the Emergency Operations Center is stood up. They come in and help address any of the Health and Human Services components for that. Over the last several years, we've been working with our local skilled nursing facilities. They're required by the state to have emergency planning piece. So we've worked hand in hand with the health department, the LERC position to get training out to the skilled nursing facilities and to help them meet the state and federal requirements. I think that's it. If there's any other questions, at least on the local level, I know Marissa wants to talk about regionally and at the state.
Marissa Hutchison. I live here in Cowlitz County and serve Cowlitz 2 Fire and Rescue as a commissioner. And then I work in a regional capacity in the public health healthcare sector as well. Just to give you kind of an idea of some of the responses that this position supports, when we have supply chain disruptions from things like landslides that impact I-5. That position is an integral part of that coordination effort to ensure that we don't have a disruption to healthcare delivery in our community. We've talked a lot about some of those high consequence, low frequency events like, the Cascadia earthquake, things like radiation exposure, chemical response exposure. If we had a large contingent of law enforcement or fire personnel who were exposed to a substance during the course of a response, this position would help coordinate the medical countermeasure delivery. And other aspects like Scott spoke about, that regional coordination for emergency operations centers is really key. You do really need someone with a particular medical public health background to serve in this role well. And it has been a large contributor in our response community locally. So any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer those.
So the position has been empty since early May, mid-May, May?
Yes, it's been about May.
Okay. And what things have we not been able to do as a consequence of that?
We're sort of on hold. Carol's fulfilling some of the responsibilities within her capacity, but not all of them. She's not able to take on and do all of it.
And we're in the middle of the rewrite, the 5-year review, the comprehensive emergency plan. Several of those subsections deal directly with the health department. We've had to slow pedal that until we figure out what's going to happen with this position, because that position is going to be integral in helping develop that planning and push that planning out.
Yeah, I'll be frank here. I'm having a hard time understanding what I think I would normally classify as a Maytag repairman. You hope that everything is kind of no accident, no repair required, in which case I think it is good to have someone as a liaison, but what does that person do for the remainder of the time? And being frank too, I used to attend a little bit the LEPC meetings, and those were always strange to me because I don't think, from my perspective, I could sink my teeth into anything. Catastrophes do occur, and planning for them notoriously turns out to be inadequate, no matter how hard you plan for the catastrophe. So I just don't know, once you had your 5-year plan from last year, or the 5 years ago, whenever it is, and you have a new one, what exactly do you upgrade, and why does that take a huge amount of effort? I don't see any of that. And I think it's your job to explain that to me in a manner that allows me to understand that, in fact, it is a requirement, a practical requirement. Your other answer would be, well, it's not a practical requirement, but it's a bureaucratic requirement, and that might be easier to understand.
So specifically for the comprehensive emergency plan, that's required by the state. The state has issued a massive sweeping change to how the comprehensive emergency plan is now written. There have certain requirements now that we need to meet at the state level, the bureaucracy that you're speaking about. And that's now the new hurdle that we have to get over, is to now meet the state standards. Again, a moving target that the state now is required for us.
Can you put some teeth into that or some meat around that bone?
So specifically, formatting changes, direct link to the threat hazard analysis, back to that, some specific comprehensive pieces to tie all of the different levels together. So the mass fatality plan needs to meet the mass care plan. So they need to have cross references throughout. And again, it's just state requirements they pushed out from Department of Emergency Management.
But so far, I haven't heard anything that would tell me it needs to be an HHS employee in there.
So specifically HHS, like skilled nursing facilities are specific health and human services. That's one of the key components for any sections that deal with mass care, and Marissa could probably speak to this clearer. Mass care, if we have a mass incident that we have to deal regionally with a mass patient load, then that's where that person would be integral in
Yeah.
bringing that together.
And so just to add to that, this is a standard position across the state of Washington. Every county, including Skamania County, Wahkiakum County, has a person in this position to coordinate those activities in their community. In the plan that he spoke about has to be exercised yearly. There's kind of a cadence to that, a standard in our nation for doing that under the FEMA concept. And there's a lot that comes with that. So we do need to be having exercises and practicing that, training our health department teams to manage those public health emergencies, to support those local responses, because it is a departmental response before it is an EOC response. And so we should be equipped to be able to do that. They also, part of that is the medical countermeasure program. So we do have pod kits here that are managed by the local health department. And this position is the position that coordinates their activation and response and delivery. And that is a big portion of this work as well, to be able to activate the strategic national stockpile and provide care to our community.
My mom admonished me once when I said, well, everybody else is doing it. I probably don't need to complete that admonishment. I still think of the Maytag repairman, where you're talking about in an emergency. You tell me when the last emergency we had.
Well, I mean, that's something Gina, I think, could probably speak to here locally, but
Could you speak into that a little more?
regionally, we have some responses all the time and they vary, but we exercise constantly. And if we don't have a person in this position, we can't even do that portion of this as the exercising. So I would say that, depending on what your local vulnerability is, I do recall, for example, we had an Ebola person of interest a couple years ago that would be pretty significant for our community, and a wide variety of those things. We had the Hassa Pool chemical fire a couple years ago. Definitely could have been a situation for our county. We had the landslide, for example, in recent time that disrupted supply chain on I-5. We had the MCI event on I-5. We had the hailstorm, like a 10-car pileup, which challenged EMS capacity. So we do have things that are related to this work that we do need this position to support.
So within the last couple of years, you've had the chlorine release at Hassa Chemical that affected part of Longview and the mill sites. We've had train derailments that have affected I-5 and the shipping corridors, the 2 landslides which affected EMS and supply deliveries through not only north of us, but also south of us.
So why don't you tell me in each of those that you cite exactly what you did that would require this individual?
So in the spin up in the EOC was activated in the spin up for the chlorine release, specifically in West Longview. Luckily, we had a prevailing wind that did not push it into the downtown core area of Longview. But if it had, we would have to deal with mass care, mass sheltering, and then possible mass treatment and mass decon for people affected by chlorine release.
And how did that tie into this individual that
So
you want
this,
replaced?
that individual is kind of the gatekeeper to help bring regional resources into our county for the mass care, mass sheltering, and mass treatment, specifically from the hospitals.
So that isn't you, it's the HHS employee that would bring in the resources?
For the medical treatment side, we would activate and we would contact the state and ask for state resources, specifically military assets to help with mass decon. And then we would help align all of the response into the county.
Hey, let me switch a little bit. I don't think I'm swayed yet, but I could ask Gina a question. This individual, is that someone you view as on your staff?
Yes.
And how do you supervise this individual?
Their office is stationed in our building, and then they have regular direct report meetings with Carol. And so she's the direct supervisor and reviews the work being done, approves scheduling, that kind of thing, and then meets with them on a regular basis.
So during the absence of this individual's spot, have you noticed anything yourself?
I'm not directly involved in the work. I know Carol has taken some of it on, and I know that we're not able to participate in a lot of the regional and state planning meetings like we normally do, just because of our limited capacity right now without it.
And how has that hurt you?
We don't have someone there. So if there were an event or something like that, and there was assistance needed with the medical side, the public health component piece, we would be really strapped in being able to offer assistance in that category.
So
I'll stop.
So one of the experiences that I've had with the EOC concept was when the emergency was declared for COVID response. And we mobilized, and there were a lot of people involved in the meetings, implementing the plan, finding out what the plan was, changing the plan. But what I remember is everybody had other jobs. That during the emergency, you focus in on dealing with the emergency because the planning was done. The thing that I always have in the back of my mind in a position like this is, so what are they doing the rest of the time while we're waiting for the emergencies to happen? I understand the importance of the plan, but is it a 24, I mean, is it a
Maytag
full-time
job?
job when we don't have the emergency? And I guess that's where I need a little bit more information too. What are they doing when we don't have an emergency? And I don't know if there's a way of illustrating the various tasks that they're spending their time on. Because that word coordinating doesn't have a whole lot of meat to it. I don't know what that means. Are they sitting around waiting for another meeting, or are they working on other things? And you know, it's important to have the plans, and it's important to be able to respond and draw the human resources to protect public health and safety. But we don't have emergencies all the time. So why does it justify a full-time employee?
And I can't speak to the health department, but I know in our department specifically, our emergency response is a very, very, very small portion of our job. You know, luckily we don't have that many impacts to the county as far as large regional events that occur. Our staff spends 98+% of their time in plan preparation, community outreach, partner engagement. We do a myriad of things to get out and focus the public in on being prepared for response. Like I said, right now we're in the middle of the rewrite for the comprehensive emergency plans. We've been working specifically with American Red Cross to update our sheltering plans. They've had a transition in leadership, so we're working with them to bring them in. And then we work with all of our volunteer corps. So we have the drone team, search and rescue, the emergency communications group. So there's lots of stuff that goes on, but like I said, 98% of our work is in the preparatory cycle.
So I think I heard in part of the description of what this position is responsible for is the interface, the double checking of the plans in the various congregate housing situations, whether it's a senior living community or an adult daycare center or schools. There are an awful lot of entities that have to be contacted on a regular basis. Is that one of the things that they're
Yes.
doing? They're constantly double checking, making sure the plan's in place, updating the plans as the rules change.
It's a very intensive outreach and coordination type position. All those skilled nursing facilities, clinics, hospitals, dialysis, all these places people go to get care, to ensure that, because there's turnover, there's a high degree of turnover in healthcare. And I think that's an even more important reason for this position, because that tends to have an impact. Training, meetings, there's a lot of coordination meetings at every level, from the local level to the state level, cross jurisdiction. There's EMS meetings, there's LEPC meetings, and that person is that subject matter expert about public health and healthcare in Cowlitz County. And so it's not, I think the question was, does this need to be an HHS position? And that's where it lives because of the need for that expertise.
Let's go back to COVID a little bit. When that was declared an emergency, were the hospitals and everybody calling this person? Saying, what do we do?
There was no LRC at that time, and I was the emergency manager at the hospital. And I partnered with the EOC and with Elaine, who was the director at that time, to help kind of fill the gap.
So
But
what wouldn't have happened if this person wasn't there?
There was, I know one of the things that we worked on early on was there was a shortage of PPE that was coming to healthcare facilities. And so helping to coordinate that and how it gets to where it needs to go, that was part of this person's role.
infection control as well, to mitigate future impacts. I think, one of the parts of this position is an education position. Because prevention, right, is so much easier than treatment after the fact. And so a lot of that work went into that response as well. And that's just one of many different types of responses. And I think, hopefully it's a long time before we have to see something like that again, but having that expertise from this position to help that response, I think would have been a better outcome than not having that response.
Well, I'm kind of in the vein of Commissioner Mortensen. When something happens, it's amazing to me how many times people step up. And so I don't know. This seems like it's a position that the government wants you to have, and I'm not sure I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure it's needed. Just be frank.
I think I'll just conclude with, I'm a negative on that.
I would be too.
Okay. Okay. We appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last item I have is an executive session for collective bargaining.
Are there 2 executive sessions?
Oh, yeah, Bailey has one too.
Okay.
So how long do you think, Jessica?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? How long do you think, Ms. Bailey? 10? So executive session for collective bargaining, 10 minutes, executive session for performance of a public employee, 10 minutes. We will do those. Thanks.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 11:36 a.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 11:42 a.m.
Okay, back from executive session. No decisions were made. I'll turn it over to Jessica.
Jessica with Human Resources again. I have two additional requests from the auditor's office. The first is to reclassify the accounting specialist to a new position, AP accountant, salary grade 250.
Okay.
I'm okay with
I'm Okay
that.
with that.
And then the next request is request to fill a new position in elections titled the Elections Supervisor. This is an exempt position at salary grade 530.
You said supervisor.
Supervisor, yeah.
That's appropriate.
Okay,
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Great.
thank you. One other thing on the agenda for tomorrow under miscellaneous, vote on appointment of Board of Health members. Okay. And I'm assuming they were all, the names I were given were all the ones that are being referred to us?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, and we again are free to choose.
right, right, just. Okay, any other miscellaneous before we get out of here? Sure.
Is the mic on? Jim? Is the mic on? Please, I all know, you all know that. Okay, let me get to business. Thank you for. Closing my department. My wife. When I went home that night to tell my wife I'm retired, officially done, she just kind of, okay. She went into the kitchen, brought out a roll of paper towels that every page was written on at least 10 jobs. And she held one in and she flung it across the room. She says, "That's this week." I didn't realize, as I'm approaching my friends and colleagues of many years, how much I had been abandoning or neglecting my own farm with 50 plus, 60 plus hours a week in trying to build something that I was entirely responsible for, of which I still stand responsible for. So I have to ask for a little indulgence, as I tend to be a rabbit hole thinker, and I have to lay it out in pieces. Cowlitz County needs to dredge. There's just no, I can honestly prove it to you scientifically. I've gone about researching now for several years. It needs to do. Alluvial channel reconstruction is the proper terminology. And that was what I was working for. When I was given the distinct privilege of putting together my own department called reclamation and remediation, my job was to build a composting operation that would pay for itself. My job was to then utilize that composting program to plant, revegetate the spoils at LT1 to make it functional, to eradicate infectious weeds.
as well as just to provide ground cover. But the number three most significant thing that I designed back then was for shoreline stabilization and reconfiguring that channel. That had to be done. The amount of shoreline erosion was off the charts then, and that's been, excuse me, I think for Mr. Dahl, who wasn't here then, it's been about 12 years ago, 12 or 13, when I hatched my ideas and made them known to Public Works. And then it took 10 years longer getting sustainment at it, because I had to keep building it, I had to keep perfecting it. And the biggest problem I had was getting it through state regulatory agencies and permitting. And every step of the way, it's been a fun ride while they dodge, move the conditions, the requirements. You comply, submit, only to be rejected at the first level, because they just don't approve of biosolids, for example, being composted and being spread or utilized near a water source, to it, the Toutle River or the Cowlitz. And even though I overcame, even though I overcame every stumbling block legally, not just opinion, I was able to negotiate intervention through a Dr. Sarah Brown with the University of Washington. As you will know and learn ahead of me, I'm certain you did, ecology doesn't like to do anything and take the liability. They want somebody else to carry the liability. So they'll help design, they'll help approve, only if someone takes the liability. And so we concurred in meeting early on, everything would be deferred to Dr. Brown. And she would decide the methodology that which I had created. I got that approval. I got that sustainment. But we still had a wild ride getting ecology to open their door and do the job. Let me do the job. 2 years ago, please correct me on time, I looked at Commissioner Weber because he was kind of my handler, if you want to call it that. But nevertheless, about 2 years ago, I was given the opportunity to take the project and go forward and actually make a department, make a functional department for reclamation, remediation, and shoreline stabilization, river dredging. I created it. Public Works was fantastic. Savannah Clement sat down, we've got to create this thing, what's your pay, what's your title, all this sort of good stuff. And for each of you, I did sit down with Savannah, and I chose a lesser wage than what my credentials hold and require, let alone the new credentials that I was constantly adding each month to put validity to the decisions I was making environmentally. And so I chose just a low supervisor's wage and a true project manager, and I have a lot of contacts in the field now. And I did then, sir, gentlemen, pardon me. My wage I chose was way low, but it was for a reason. I served the public. And not just that, I had to keep you guys wanting to go forward. And it wouldn't happen if I was demanding big bucks. This is all about service to the public. This is all about service to the environment and creating something out of nothing. But when I got finally my license to go forward, create a department, the first thing that was lovely done was to weight me down with the collaborative, Spirit Lake Toutle Cowlitz River Collaborative, an enormous, interesting meeting of 29 regulators and 79 now, over 100 now, participants who each have a vested interest, or they say they have a vested interest in the Toutle Cowlitz. And there's one agency, you gentlemen, who are the #1 priority because you represent the public and the public safety and needs, and we are at a very critical situation on the dredging of that river. The problem is they don't allow at the collaborative for you to speak forthright and say, we have an emergency in our hands. You have to, excuse me, be low key. You can hint at urgent, but it's nothing that's life risky, at risk. No, I am telling you flat out, we're at a very critical point in time. We've got to dredge, particularly the work that I brought about. And so 2 years after I was saddled with the collaborative, and I chuckle when I say it because I've made so many friends and there's so much contact with other leaders and stuff like that. You start to think, I'm losing my mind. I've got myself spread way too thin, and I did. Spread myself too thin. Interesting. So I went about the collaborative to push for stabilization and shoreline stabilization, excuse me, and the alluvial channel reconstruction. And the thing that first came up was a first year was just learning, sitting back and waiting for all of the respective agencies to decide what they were going to do and how they were going to dictate to us what to do. When the purpose of the collaborative was long-term sediment management. To this day, they've never discussed it. To this day, I've registered 24 times a complaint. Why aren't we discussing the actual charge for which we've been given? Long-term sediment management. And I hatched my plan. I have hatched my particular agenda plan for managing that soil for the last 10, 12 years. And I have covered every significant business, Rotary, public agencies, associations, especially in sewer and waste, hundreds, and all the major businesses locally I have addressed and taken the program to, and I've had nothing but support. They know that something has to be done, and they're all been very interested in the fact that I developed something that would pay mostly for itself. That was an unheard of thing, and I stand by it. It's our responsibility first. Let's find some way to fund this thing without putting the burden on you gentlemen. But I've got the collaborative. So finally a break came when we had our one and only lab, I think it was you call it, or a work detail. I'm sorry if I look to you, Commissioner, because I need to make sure I'm communicating. So we had a workshop, Commissioner Dahl. In that workshop, I presented that. They actually pushed me to the forefront. I'm the only one that knows or thinks he knows how to manage that soil. And I prevailed. And Army Corps came to me and asked, you made the comment, LT1 was their responsibility. They created it. And Army Corps said, you're right. But I said it in such a way, non-accusatory, just that you built it. There wasn't enough money to finish it. We need to get busy and we need to finish it. So would you help me out, please? And the chief did. She brought to me a particular form, section 14, of which you're acquainted with. And I filled that 14 out just to get started. And I want to say, I read it. It is a small work detail permit grant. So I read it 1,000 times. LT1 is a small portion of the total. Actually, let's look at this thing. Let's change our perspective. We have 75 miles of shoreline we need to contend with. So I wrote the small permit for 9 miles. LT1 all the way down to Horseshoe Bend on the Cowlitz. Yes, I was playing with their minds. Yes, I was actually playing a chess game with newfound friends who really did care. It's just overcoming all the obstacles of internal regulation, stipulation by their managers. So I went down to Portland because they accommodated the deaf old guy. so they could have a one-on-one with regarding to my section 14. They put it on stay. This is primarily for Commissioner Dahl, because he's the one that's going to be going forward from this point forward. And he's not been informed properly. Nobody ever asked me.
That's your opinion.
No, sir. But if I may, Army Corps took that section 14 and said, we have to move it up to regulatory because of the size of which you wrote this small job. That's exactly where I needed to be. And that's exactly where I wanted to be. And that's exactly where I needed to get it for you so that we could actually discuss alluvial channel reconstruction, dredging. To back up another rabbit hole, for the last buku years, I also developed and designed out three different methods of how to
Can you
dredge.
explain where we're going with this?
Like
We
I
need
said
to
at the
get to an
beginning, I have
endpoint
a
at some
couple
point in
of
time. 'cause
rabbit holes.
if you want to talk about history, I don't know how long I want to sit here and just regurgitate the history.
I'm just about done
Okay,
because I'm exactly where you need to be. And by that, I mean Army Corps pushed it into regulatory. And I was at the time, because I believe it was May 18th, Friday, whatever, 17th or 18th. We held the meeting with conservation out there. I had just finished 3 days prior with regulatory, the second agent that I was referred to, Omar Ortiz, and the other one was Brad Johnson. They are solely responsible for the regulatory end of entering that water to do a job. And both concluded,
have very little responsibility.
I'm sorry,
I'm told they have very little responsibility. The gal that heads that down there said they don't really have any responsibility over that.
I'm glad to hear
So
your,
I'm just
opinion.
I'm just regurgitating what I'm told by their boss.
And that is who, please help me out. You remember,
I
sir?
don't know where we're going.
Which boss, please, because I've talked to, and I've been working with multiples. I need to help
It's not
you.
your concern anymore. Go ahead, finish up.
Okay, it is a concern. Because if you're not asking the right boss, you don't know what he's advising you on. Nevertheless, both have given me the list of sections that they want me to fill out and proceed to a select or modified dredge, to wit, LT1, all the way down to through the city of Castle Rock down to Horseshoe Bend. And I had it verbally done with a list of what they wanted me to write the day that I met with conservation commissioners at the LT1 for what to do, how to fix that problem. And I was pretty excited about it because the final closing deal with the regulatory division was that they thought they could have a little extra money. They have it in hand to help us fix a blowout on the Tootle Park Road. So I felt pretty good. There's been a lot of work, a ton of work. Now I'm going to add one more rabbit hole just to frustrate you. March came to conservation meeting, ecology set in and complimented themselves. About 112 functions where they had driving through Lewis, Cowlitz, and Clark. They go from farm to farm to farm, and they, from the roadway, they evaluate it to see if it's compliant with water quality or sediment issues. I got irate. I don't know what oath you guys take for your office, but 40 plus years ago, my oath was to protect and to serve and to provide for the people the rights and privileges to exercise their constitutional freedoms. I've always done that. I can't break myself of that habit. What they were doing going from farm to farm, they were sending letters of correction. Think of it like a citation. What they didn't know, what they didn't remember, was that we had an interlocal agreement with conservation and ecology that a citizen who was sanctioned by letter could approach their conservation for remediation and mitigation. So we'd go in, we'd identify, we correct, we send a letter of fulfillment to ecology, and it's over with. Very few citizens know about it. But I knew about it. So I invited their inspector, if you want to call it that, Take me on a ride, show me what you do. I know how to build a case. And he did. And I said, now I want to show you a farm I've got responsibility for. I want you to evaluate it. I'm the manager, I'm the sole responsible person for it. I want you to evaluate it, pardon me, the same way that we just did all these other farms. And let's see what you say. So he was really good, very mature, very capable young man. And he evaluated LT1 and said, oops, I don't know what to do here. He says, it doesn't comply in any way. This is a disastrous situation. And he also knows that it's due to a natural event. I said, okay, if that's your conclusion, I want a citation. Give me a write-up. We need to get this in front of ecology, which has been absent from the collaborative, especially water quality, which is the #1 leading agency. So I got my wish. They can't write me a citation. They can't even write a correction. It's a natural event, but it's a game I needed to play. I needed to force the hand. And what did we get? I got a chance to tour the new director and 6 of his managers. They came out along with Commissioner Dahl and Savannah from Public Works, and I put on what I call one of my dog and pony shows. The objective of my show, letting the river tell them what it needs done and leave them with a question. What am I asking of them? They were wonderful. They treated me very, very well. They left, and 4 days later, I got a thank you letter. All of it, which I sent a copy to each one of you. Not an accolade. It's an unheard of appreciation and a volunteering of how can we help? That was my ask. How can you help us? From funding to regulation. Also, too, if you'll momentarily recall, it activates the Conservation District as a go-between. And I needed that. I needed that request because we're not adequately staffed and we're underfunded, not asking for funds, guys. We have a problem with not enough manpower, but nevertheless, activating the conservation to remediate and mitigate LT1 was my goal for the last 12 plus years. So here you sit right now. I'll be happy to wind it up for you, commissioners. You are sitting here, the Conservation District and Ecology have both vocalized, they want me to continue my work. I can't. I'm not asking to come out of retirement either, but right now I'm donating all that I'm doing. One of the cities has been kind enough because my farm is remote and I don't have computer access web and my phone reception is terrible. I have an office that they're allowing me to use so that I can continue to fulfill the request of regulatory and the title sections that they're asking me to do in order to put forward the need for channel reconstruction and shoreline stabilization. They've been hounding me ever since I left, and it's okay. I'll donate, but I still need your permission to sign off LT1 to the state, not as an authority, but to stockpile the dredge spoils. And LT1 is classified a sump, and it's still under the total jurisdiction of the Army Corps. And I have presented to DNR, Forest Service, DFW, and Army Corps, all of them, and it all comes right back to Army Corps. And I need to stabilize, I need to have that channel constructed. So I would like to leave it with thanks. I really enjoyed my lot of years with Cowlitz County, but I have one personal thing I need to say. My letter of, I was assured at the time that I was defunded. I was assured I had not done anything wrong. I've not committed a theft. I've not embarrassed my county. In fact, if you look at it, we're moving forward for the dredge, and we desperately need it. It is an urgency state. I've never done anything to offend my agencies. I have nothing but good record. But that severance letter is the most insulting, rude, injurious assault, and yet it's supposed to be, we've complied with the law, we're letting you go, we don't have a position that we're gonna vacate or make for you, and also a severance package. But you've been terminated, you've been defunded, you've been let go, you've been fired. It lists all the reasons. And then it's a secretive document that I sign in that supposedly county nor I can talk about. Everything that we sign together is public. And the next day it goes in the file, and I don't have anything that warrants termination, anything. If I boo-booed and I spoke out the wrong way, what you want to disagree with me on in handling ecology, okay. But I got a huge thanks for that. And not just that, they sit down now for the third meeting with conservation in May. How much money do you need? They're willing to open the pocketbook to help us. Now, truthfulness is in the pudding. You know, when I see the greenbacks, I'll believe you. But they're been consistent. How much do you need? How much do you want? Now I don't know how to answer it. But that's where you're at. So with your permission, or not, at least at minimum, I'm going to continue filing section 13, 14, 15, 17, 20, 45, and what's called an individual permit. All of them, the individuals, a summary of those numbers I listed. I'm going to file them at the request of Army Corps and the regulatory division and the dredging division, Portland. But I really am reluctant unless I've got your go ahead. I'm not going to obligate you to money. The small amount that we're already obligated to, regulatory came up with 6 different professionals they're bringing in from the Midwest with 30 years of experience that will help me in the design. I've already got an idea, but we need an official. 3 things are in play already. 1980 Congressional Act is still current and open. 2019 Act, not an act, excuse me, the summary letter of the, whatever the top title guy is in Army Corps. We feel we've done adequately. Things are kind of status quo. We're going to concentrate only on the SRS and LOP. Meantime, dredging still remains viable for the entire section, and the letter says so. All we need is money, not from you. I was moving congressionally along with you. So that's where you sit. And the last thing, besides, love you guys, I gotta go, is you're holding tons of my literature, printouts and manuals and stuff that I have bought or I have copied, none of which are proprietary by true definition. Nothing. Many of them are just copies of some of these letters that I've been able to find in Army Corps and Feds. Many of them are manuals. Can we please cease and desist with this game? I got to pay 16 cents a page up at, you know, from 10 and above, and I've got 4 totes back there that you're having to babysit. None of it's that you're going to use. It's all the stuff that I've been using, most of which I paid for. They said I have to show evidence, a receipt. I didn't keep them. You're welcome to look, but none of it, anything that was proprietary is right here. Everything is totally compliant, and you have the computer, and you also have a bag of my thumb drives. Some of them with books, things I've amassed and acquired. Can we please release that stuff back to me so I can continue my work? Most of it's research. I don't know what anything else would matter to you. That is one question. There's two things before you. You got to decide, I'm going to be filing these permits, and I just need your moral support. I'm not asking for money. And
Whatever
yes,
you
I'd
do
like
as an
research.
individual, you have a right to do.
I'm
But
sorry.
you- Whatever you decide to do as an individual, if you want to do that as an individual, that's up to you. But you're not, you don't do stuff as part of the county.
I agree with you. That's why I'm coming to you, because this was the job that I was doing for you. And most of it was 11 years of just flat donation on my part. All donation.
County
I
didn't
never
pay
had,
you?
pardon me?
County didn't pay you?
Correct. I ran the vegetation shop,
Yeah.
an exemplary vegetation shop,
I was assuming you were getting wages.
not for anything else I did in the research and the development of these programs, nor in my moving and promoting. I didn't have overtime. And I created it for a reason. It was obvious. And you were lovely in finally giving me a vote of approval to go forward. I'm beating my gums. Nevertheless, yes, I do have a responsibility to you. This is a county permit. It's being issued. And it would be most advisable, from experience and surviving, of which I'm still actively now part of the collaborative. You have another financial means available to you, and that's the FB, Floodplains by Design, FBD, of which our agency, excuse me, the throat's getting dry. Our agency said they were overwhelmed and too busy to handle. So I undertook it, and I got 2/3 through it, and it is a very sophisticated application that carries money with it. It needs to be done. That's the only way I can say to you, there's an avenue for you, financial, and then the rest is through Senator Murray. And you've been wonderful there, Commissioner Weber. So questions of me, I know I can go on for a long time because there's a lot of stuff I've created. I don't know if my batteries failed or what. Forgive me. I'd rather laugh at something.
No, I don't have anything.
So I may not have the full story, but my understanding was we were going to be relying on the Conservation District to sort of go forward with that element.
We asked the Conservation District to give us an idea of what it would take to shore up that one piece. That was the ask to Conservation District. He provided that document to us as to what the different ways we could do that. It was all out of their scope. Then I went down and had a meeting with Army Corps and Ecology and talked about some of the avenues with them. And we're working on that with Army Corps. We're going to try and have it engineered. We're looking to have some help with that. That's where we're at right at the moment. And right now, from Steve Kopecki, who runs Army Corps out of Washington, D.C., there will be no dredging in that river. There will be no dredging. There will be no dredging. There will be no dredging. I don't know how many times I got to hear it from him before I believe it. But unless there's a change in mandate from the legislature, and we're working with our lobby group on that. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
May I? And I totally respect what he's saying because it's the same thing I went through with Army Corps. But I made it through to the next level.
It doesn't get any more higher level than Steve Kopecki.
Yes, and you acknowledged it, sir, and I really trust your words. Congressional.
We're past all this. This is county business now. You're not part of the county. I'll just be blunt with you. You're not part of the county. We're doing county business. And
I'm not going to do
it's
county
not a
business.
discussion with you.
It should be,
It
because I
shouldn't
can help you cut some
No, you
corners
can't.
that they forced on me that I overcame.
It's in our hands.
Correct. It's actually
w-
congressional hands because you're looking for funding.
Exactly. And that's
Okay.
what we do.
I would not disagree, and that's why I'm here. But what you need,
You're here to complain about the way you were handled is what you're here to do. And you've had your time and we've given you your time and I don't
I'm
mind
almost
giving you your
finished.
time. But I'm not going to sit here all afternoon and listen to it.
Well, like you said to me, sir, you're getting paid for it. So in conclusion, the thing that is needed, along with your permits, filings, is an authority to say that it needs to be dredged. And your congressional advocate, which is Murray and Perez, and I have had several appointments and stuff like that, and trying to further the cause, the scientific end. And you're prime to take these permit filings to your advocates. Thank you. Is there anything? Can I get my stuff, please? It's nothing but manuals and tutorials. And I really don't want to leave here
Yeah.
having to take more time off work.
That's more of I think that's council question is what is county rights versus personal rights. I don't know that it's a decision of ours.
I'd be happy to wait for you.
We have to leave all our stuff behind, right?
Yeah.
If there's a way, I mean, we don't necessarily need to hang on to them if we can legally release them, but I don't know how to do that.
There's a good, strong portion of it that is strictly conservation. They're all the guides, lines that I use to sit down, and make decisions like what you do. They're on hard plastic sheets, and they took them and dumped them out. And they are what I went through training. I've been volunteering with conservation for more than 17 years. I kept all my stuff together and my thumb drives, books that have nothing to do with anything. So I will continue to drop in and go through it page at a time. But I would love to hear a correct action. It's just junk to you. These are not official decisions, except for the permits. Right. With respect, thank you, Mark. And Commissioner Dahl. Thank you.
Anything else for today?
I hope not.
Okay, we will adjourn.